Carbohydrates are all water-loving biological molecules. They are polar or hydrophilic, which we know is water-loving. Recall that hydrophilic molecules we talked about that are polar, like rice and bread and starches. You cook these in water, right? Don't forget cotton clothing and paper products that are also hydrophilic. The basic chemical formula for any carbohydrate is 1 carbon to 2 hydrogens to 1 oxygen. Think about that for a moment. There's an H2O in there, right? With just a carbon slapped on the front. Carbohydrates are our primary energy source. Your cells are looking for glucose to generate energy in the form of ATP. Carbs might not be necessarily bad. I mean, it depends on your diet. There are different kinds of carbohydrates, and each of them comes along with a suffix or an ending, saccharide. Monosaccharides are simple sugars. Your body thinks of these like cash in the bank, ready to spend. It's right in your pocket, and you can really get that energy very simply out of it. We have things like glucose, fructose, and galactose. These are all things that you crave so much because they're tasty and sugary. Cookies, Starbucks, and just good things. When we combine 2 monosaccharides together, we get a disaccharide, which is just 2 monosaccharides bonded together. Lactose is a great example of a disaccharide. We've got glucose and we've got galactose bonded together. Sucrose, or table sugar, is another example of glucose and fructose bonded together. Lactose intolerant people can't digest or break that bond between the 2 monosaccharides. They lack the enzyme lactase that digests lactose, and the complete molecule passes through the digestive tract painfully. Polysaccharides are known as our complex carbs in our diet. We know the dietary complex carbs like starches, but there's a lesser known one named glycogen, which is found in animal muscle. Common to all polysaccharides is that they are made up of a very, very large amount of monosaccharide subunits. I do love celery. I do. And I like to grow it in my garden. I grow Utah celery. I used to live in Utah. When it's nice and fresh, it's got kind of like a nutty flavor. And those strings in celery are made of cellulose. Cellulose is made only by plants, and it's indigestible by animals. Well, I have a little asterisk there because there are some insects that can digest it. Similar to those who are lactose intolerant from a lack of the lactase enzyme, all humans lack the digestive enzyme to digest cellulose. Things that contain cellulose, like celery, add dietary fiber to your diet. Moving on to the next category of biological molecules, and remembering that there were 4 categories: carbs, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. Lipids, unlike carbs, are hydrophobic. If you've taken a nutrition class, you know that lipids have the most energy per gram, or the most calories per weight. If you're consuming lots of lipids, that might not be good for you as a human, depending on the types of lipids you're consuming. But a fat little bird like this stores up on lipids before it flies south for the summer. Since lipids contain the most energy per weight, this fat little bird prefers to stock up on them for this intensely demanding migration south. For us as humans, lipids are necessary in our diet. They do some very important things like energy storage, but they also do things like insulation and cushioning. We all know about baby fat, especially on the posterior lower area. Simply, the fat on your butt provides cushioning when you fall while learning to walk. In our diets, lipids are more like having a check from someone instead of getting cash. You have to deposit the check in the bank of fat deposits, and then you have to withdraw the cash at a later point to buy some ATP. Triglycerides are so named because they have 3 fatty acids and a glycerol head. These are the major dietary currency. Whenever I talk about triglycerides, I can't help but think of the movie Fight Club. They're stealing fat from a plastic surgery center to make explosives, and the bag of fat goes over the barbed wire and it starts spilling all over the place. I know that movie's old, but that is such a great movie. Okay, so the 3 fatty acid tails on a triglyceride molecule, they can have different structures from each other. This is where we get the terminology saturated, unsaturated, polyunsaturated, horrendously bad for you. No, I'm kidding. You can discuss this in detail in one of the nutrition classes that we offer here at FLCC, but for us here in this biology class, we can just kind of quickly, briefly look at some of the types of fatty acids. This fatty acid here up at the top is saturated with hydrogen atoms. The carbons are holding as many hydrogen atoms as they possibly can. And remember, that's just a fatty acid, one of the 3 tails on a triglyceride. Let's compare the mono-unsaturated fat to the saturated fat. The mono-unsaturated has one area where the hydrogen bonds have been broken. This bond has been replaced with a bond between the 2 carbons. And it gives this double bond between the 2 carbons. You see, it just progresses with polyunsaturated fats, adding more double bonds between the carbons. We've accumulated more of those double bonds. Partially hydrogenated fats are like margarine, and polyunsaturated fats have hydrogens that have been forced back on them to make them saturated. What are trans fats? Well, they're even worse. Trans fats are basically, they're these forms with kinks in the structure between the carbons. Unsaturated fats are things that are liquid, really, at room temperature. Like olive oils and peanut oil. These fats break down very, very easily at room temperature. They go rancid easily, right? They also break down easily in your body. We have things also like saturated fats like butter and ice cream, and our body doesn't like to break them down. Our body likes to store those. That's why some of them, they have a very long shelf life. There are some things called butter bells or butter bowls, and this is where you put butter in a container and then invert it upside down into a small film of water. And that film of water prevents oxygen or light from getting to it and making the bonds rancid. All right, before we get started, I just want to tell you that I did not create this. I stole it from an idea from Alton Brown, who has some really great cookbooks, and they build on the science of biological molecules. He talks about your kitchen and your pantry, and he talks about the ways that you cook and how you're manipulating these biological molecules. All right, so let's think of the carbon chain of a fatty acid like these ladies. The ladies are the carbons. They're all bonded together, and each of them is also holding their nice little shopping bags, which are the hydrogen atoms. This is a saturated fat. If we take away some of the hydrogen atoms, tearing the shopping bags away from their hands, double bonds between the ladies then form, and we have an unsaturated fat. Unfortunately, you know that oils, liquids, unsaturated fats go rancid very easily. And if we force hydrogen atoms back onto those ladies' hands, breaking the double bonds between the ladies, we can make a partially hydrogenated fat. The simple rule here, though, is that if a fat has a long shelf life, it's probably going to stay in your body for a long period of time as well. Moving on from triglycerides, we have a second kind of lipid, which is a sterol. Sterols are made from cholesterol, and cholesterol is necessary in your diet to form any of the steroid hormones like testosterone and estrogen. Other steroid hormones of note are things called glucocorticoids, like cortisol. And cortisol is released from your adrenal gland. There are also mineral corticoids, like aldosterone, which monitors the sodium balance and the potassium balance in your body by influencing your kidney. I just wanted to point that out, that it's not just reproductive hormones. Our third and final category of lipids is phospholipids. These are very important for us in this class because they form the basic structure of a cell membrane. They look like a balloon with two strings on it. They have this polar head, and then they have these non-polar fatty acid tails coming off of them. Cell membranes are composed of a phospholipid bilayer, or a double layer of phospholipids, and they're arranged very specifically. In fact, if you put phospholipids in water and shake them up for an eternity, I'm kidding, they can form these little bubbles. They can, just spontaneously. It might take a really long time though, like a millennia. The polar heads are exposed to the water on the outside of this little bubble on the left. They're also exposed to the water on the inside of the bubble. The non-polar tails are facing each other, and this is what forms a bilayer. And this bilayer has a non-polar region in the center. It's somewhat like a sandwich. The polar heads are the bread, and the non-polar region is whatever you like inside your sandwich. Hummus, PB&J, fluff and bananas, whatever you like, but really not all of those things together at once on a sandwich. That sounds so gross.